Here you go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rob Nelson Live. This is our first actual live stream show. We are testing it out, getting things loose and going. Welcome. All
Hi,
right,
guys. I'm Bruce. I'm the producer for the show, and I'll be bringing you guys on. Right there, you can jump on camera with us. You'll see where it says to jump on camera. Go ahead and click on that link. And at certain times when Rob has a break, we'll bring another guest on, and you guys can ask questions and jump back and forth.
Love it. All right, let me get right to it. Let's jump in. All right, so today what I want to get into is, and again, yeah, we'll get back to the fact, I want your participation, you to join in, but you can join in by texting, commenting, and mostly sharing and starting to create a community out of this. My goal with this is every week to have a monologue, a conversation, a dialogue about stuff that's inspiring, and also every week on a second podcast to actually have live guests who come in. And we've got a cool episode coming up on Friday where we're going to be talking all about cannabis, the weed industry, with a big cannabis reporter and a woman who runs a super cool creative agency that is all about cannabis. And it's going to be really fun. Cannabis in the coronavirus era. But today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind. And it's about Me Too, double standards, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And I'm putting that all into one because I think they all fit together. The Me Too movement started kind of with a blast out of a rocket, all about Harvey Weinstein, all about big, powerful executives, big, powerful politicians getting away for years and years and years with committing sexual harassment, often sexual assault, and certainly massively inappropriate behavior with women. And if you remember, we all got on board, and there was a big divide initially, because initially the idea was if a woman says it, you have to believe it. And a lot of people pushed back on that and said, well, that's not necessarily fair to men. I mean, just because someone says it doesn't mean it's true. Let's face it, for a lot of sexual harassment stuff, it's he said, she said. But in fairness, women and people who are really pushing the Me Too movement said, you know what? It's gone on too long. The bias has been against women for too long. They haven't been allowed to be heard and they haven't been believed. So we actually have to tilt the pendulum toward women and go, if they're saying it, we need to listen, hear them, take their accusations seriously, and put a little of the burden on the man. Now, that's an interesting thing in the world we live in, because typically we go, you're innocent until proven guilty. And Me Too started to suggest, well, you might be guilty until proven innocent. And it became a big cultural battle. But listen, I'm the first to say we needed to have it. We needed to start getting women's voices who had been buried, repressed, shut down. We're taking advantage. Now, we'll get into some nuances on where this all went south. But what happened, and if you followed the news at all, you remember Judge Kavanaugh, now Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, had his confirmation hearing. And in the middle of the hearing, boom, what exploded? But a sexual assault allegation from when he was a teenager in high school. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. And if you paid attention even a teeny bit to the media, it was everywhere. It was a massive media blast. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories on CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post and Fox News, endless coverage. Countless politicians, countless female activists, countless Me Too activists coming out and saying, Judge Kavanaugh, that Christine Blasey Ford should be believed. I believe the woman. Despite the fact that Dr. Ford's allegation was from decades ago at a party, she couldn't remember when, she couldn't remember where. She could only remember that it was Justice Kavanaugh, who was then Brett Kavanaugh the kid, who she never met, who she didn't know. But she knew somehow it was him from years later. No one ever else at the party remembered it. She couldn't remember where the party was. Her best friend was at the party with her, and her best friend couldn't remember her saying anything about it. And over the years, she had told people, so there was that, but nothing at the time. And Justice Kavanaugh denied it absolutely, unequivocally. But yet, most in the media, and certainly everyone on the political left and Democrats, went crazy. No, she should be believed. She testified before Congress. People called her heroic. She needed to be heard. She needed to be believed. What she said was true. And Justice Kavanaugh needed to defend himself. She needed to be believed. It was a huge cultural battle, massive. And at the time I said, I felt like her allegations were pretty thin. I mean, this guy had no reputation for being abusive to women or in any way, anything but exemplary toward women. He was the first justice to hire have all women clerks, and he was going to do it as a Supreme Court justice. He was a big advocate of women. Everyone who knew him said he had a flawless character. But this woman remembered something from way back with a guy she'd never met, not exactly when or where, and we all believed it. Cut to today. Tara Reid, not the actress, Tara Reid, a former staffer for then Senator Joe Biden in the 90s, came out and said that Joe Biden assaulted her. Now, initially, she had said about a couple months ago, she was among a group of women who said that Joe Biden had been inappropriate towards them. But then in the last few weeks, she came out and said, he actually assaulted me. He took me around a corner, put his hand up my shirt and stuck his fingers in me. That's a huge accusation. That's rape. The media was silent. Crickets in the media. Fox News talked about it. Some outside news sources. The mainstream media was silent. Then friends of hers came out and said she had told them about it. Her brother came out and said he told her about it. The media was still silent. Crickets. And even questioning her. Well, she changed her story. Originally, she said he was inappropriate. Now, suddenly, she's saying he raped her. Which, again, typical of sexual abuse and sexual harassment survivors say all the time. Advocates say they change their stories or their stories change or it's uncomfortable. But she went farther and said, I reported it at the time. I filed a complaint. Still silence. Until a couple of weeks ago, a recording was unearthed on CNN of all places, Larry King Live, that show 20 years ago, in which a woman who now appears to have been Tara Reid's mother called in and said, my daughter is experiencing a problem with a prominent senator she works for. She doesn't know what to do about it. She doesn't want to go to the media and discredit him and ruin him, but she can't get any help from within. Okay, your mother's calling CNN in 1993 and saying your daughter's in a jam with a male senator and doesn't want to destroy him, but doesn't know how to get taken seriously if she doesn't go to the media. That's pretty solid corroborating evidence. Multiple friends of yours say you talked about it repeatedly over the years and at the time. Your brother remembers you talking about it. You remember that. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying that is so much more corroboration than Christine Blasey Ford ever had. It's not even funny. Still largely silent from the media and the left and the Democrats, except to start saying, I believe Joe Biden. And that's where this all comes to for me, a double standard. Because again, I believe Joe Biden. I thought you believed the woman. You've got major Democratic Party and major Me Too movement people. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, saying, I believe Joe Biden. Alyssa Milano, the lead force with Rose McGowan of Me Too, saying, I am not going to destroy the reputation of a man I've known for 15 years. But that was the whole thing that happened with Me Too. So which is it? Can you be both? You have to kind of pick a side, right? I mean, either you believe that women should be believed and the evidence should lean toward them, or you kind of have to believe that the guy should be believed until proven guilty. You can't do it sometimes one way, sometimes the other way. For me, this is less about what the right standard is, which we'll get to, and more about the hypocrisy, the blatant hypocrisy of literally holding one guy to a standard with tiny amounts of evidence, and the other guy literally gets a free pass and we believe him. Now, why? Look, nobody's stupid. The reason is because Joe Biden's a Democrat and Joe Biden's running for president against Donald Trump. And nobody wants Donald Trump, who's an anti-Trump person, to win. So Democrats will do everything they can to silence Donald Trump. at all costs. All costs. They'll do anything, including ignore a sexual assault allegation, which they would never ignore if it was a Republican, in order to ensure that Donald Trump doesn't win. Is that okay? Is it okay? Do you think it's okay to decide our goal? It's so important to get Donald Trump out of office that we will look the other way on something so valuable, so important, that we said was so critical. What happens if you're willing to just put your standards aside for the sake of beating Donald Trump because you hate him so much? Are you any different? If you're willing to put your principles aside, you say he's so unprincipled, you'll look the other way. You can say, no, but Joe Biden didn't do it. Well, then here's my question. Why do you think Joe Biden didn't do it, but you think Brett Kavanaugh did? Brett Kavanaugh had a sterling reputation. No evidence of misbehavior with women. Joe Biden actually has a long history of kind of what I'd call creeper behavior. Being inappropriate, touching women, kissing their heads, odd things. It's funny because he's an old grandpa, but he wasn't an old grandpa 20, 30, 40 years ago. He was a young, healthy guy. So was it creeper old man then, or was it sleazy, powerful man then? And again, I'm not saying he did it. It's a he said, she said. I'm saying the media, at a minimum, the media has an obligation to have a singular standard, not one for one side, one for the other. And the advocates of the Me Too movement literally have no excuse. It should, if you meant what you said a year, 2 years ago about Me Too, you need to mean it just as much today. It doesn't change because you want Joe Biden to beat Donald Trump. It can't change, or you're absolutely no better than he is. Zero. So I want to put it out there to y'all. We got a couple, and we'll get to the Bernie part in a minute, but we got a couple of things going on here. One is, was the standard ever fair with Me Too? Were guys always kind of getting screwed? And two, was it okay that there's a double standard? Or do you even think there is a double standard? Does anybody think there's not a double standard? And why is Joe Biden suddenly above being looked at? I mean, Alyssa Milano saying that she took Biden's side based on what? And Rose McGowan, by the way, if you follow social media, Rose McGowan lit her up on Twitter, literally took her to shreds and was like, you are a complete hypocrite. You are a complete lie. You are completely corrupt. If you can now say Trump and Kavanaugh did it, believe the woman, but with Joe Biden, believe Joe Biden. Especially when there's more evidence in the Joe Biden one than there ever was with Justice Kavanaugh. And yet people literally act as if, no, we're being completely fair. The New York Times finally said there should actually be an investigation by the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. Oh, that's great. The FBI was supposed to investigate Kavanaugh. But with Biden, let's let the Democratic Party investigate him because they're going to do a real thorough job of investigating him, right? I mean, they've already brought Bernie down. They're literally running the ship for the establishment. But yeah, let's let them investigate. But at least they acknowledge there is something here. But they acknowledge it quietly and passively and kind of suggest Tara Reade should maybe not be believed, which is really twisted. Because the whole thing was, give the woman a voice. So Biden finally comes out and addresses it and says, well, yeah, she should be listened to, but she's wrong. But I believe the whole point of Me Too was that women should have a chance to get heard. Well, I'm sorry. I don't think Me Too was about having a chance to get heard. I don't think women ever didn't have a chance to get heard. It's just that people didn't believe them. There was never a rule you couldn't get heard. You could go to the media. You could go to whoever you wanted. It's whether they would pay attention to you. Tara Reade went to the media and got ignored over and over again as more evidence mounted. And finally, when her mother comes out, a tape 25 years ago of her mother, which, by the way, the day after that tape was revealed, I'm not making this up, you can look. CNN took the episode off of Google Play. Larry King was every day. It went from Tuesday to Thursday. The Wednesday episode that she was on went away, and they switched the numbers so it looked like there was no missing episode. I mean, okay, that's CNN literally taking the evidence that suggests that Joe Biden might have done something out. And this is a news organization. So it gets to media credibility too. And I don't care what your politics are. If the media has no credibility, which it's losing, then we are going to distrust everything every single media outlet tells us, which isn't good. Again, if you're the anti-Trumpers, this isn't good for you to have a media that is completely just a propaganda machine that you can't trust. All right. I got more to say, but I want to get a couple listeners in on this. So I see down here my thing. I got Blake. Blake's called in. Blake, what do you have to say?
Hi, Rob.
Hello, Blake.
I mean, I would say that women, for most of the time, I'm not going to say women don't lie. I don't think women are lying about being sexually assaulted. And I think the fact that politics has become such a huge part of it has diluted women's, allegations against men,
Right.
because if you, like Alyssa Milano, for example, was such an advocate for the Me Too movement, and then coming forward later and saying, I believe Joe Biden, is her just being completely persuaded by politics. And I don't think that that's fair. Like, as a woman coming from someone who's been sexually assaulted.
Well, yeah, let me stop you there, because you just said something. You just said as a woman who's been sexually assaulted. So you've had an experience with harassment or actual assault?
I don't know. What are you defining as harassment versus sexual assault? And that's,
I mean, harassment would be, to me, somebody like inappropriately commenting on you, harassing you, possibly trying to keep you from getting a promotion.
I would say, definitely harassment and assault as well. And I would say that you do remember every single detail of it. You remember what you were wearing that night. You remember how your hair was. You remember who you were with. Every single detail. And it's not, so that's not bullshit. And I think the reason women's stories change all the time is because women are unclear, uncomfortable with how I just asked you, what is sexual harassment versus what is sexual assault? The definition is always changing. And then people jump down your throats like, well, what did you say the first time? Well, did you mean that? Like, what about this time? And we're like, I don't know. I'm trying to push it to the back of my brain so much that, like, I don't even,
did you come
up every detail now?
Blake, did you come out and tell people about what happened to you at the time?
No, and to this day, I still haven't. And I don't think that there ever will be a day that I do.
And why not? Why not? Why won't you?
Because it's not worth, and I might get hate on this from other women, but it's not worth the aftermath. It's not worth the humiliation, and people, after you've already gone through it, you just kind of want to let it go, and you don't want to bring it up again, and then people be like, well, are you okay? Or, well, what happened? Or, like, even worse, the people whose family, or the family that belongs to this person, is humiliated. And then they're saying you're a liar, or they're saying they believe you, but then it wrecks the whole family. It's just not worth it.
So last question for you. What do you feel then when you, and separate whether you should or shouldn't? I think everyone has their own choice about whether they want to come out and say something. I'm obviously a believer that I think there's something powerful and healing in doing it. Although when I see what happens when people are shut down, I get why they're afraid. Mm-hmm. But what goes through your head when you see something like this happening? And again, assuming you think it's a double standard, do you think it is a double standard?
Yeah, I would say it's a double standard, because even when the Brett Kavanaugh thing happened, I got persuaded into, like, through politics, I got persuaded into saying, well, we do kind of need evidence. Like, why is this coming out so much later, kind of thing. But then I thought, well, she's probably not lying, because I didn't lie. I don't see why women would be lying, So I was on the fence with that. And also because it did happen so many years ago. But the bottom line is that women don't lie. Why would you lie about that? What comes of lying about being sexually assaulted? What did we get from that?
That's a great point. Thank you, Blake. Thanks for joining. So
yeah,
appreciate it. Really. Thank you very much. So and Blake makes an interesting point. What do you get from lying? So I'm going to be the devil's advocate. What you get from lying is you can bring down a political opponent. I'm not saying Dr. Ford was lying about Brett Kavanaugh. I don't know what was in her head. I'm saying her evidence was incredibly thin, and her own best friend who was at the party doesn't remember it and doesn't remember saying anything. I'm saying her evidence was thin. Did something happen to her? Maybe. Was it Brett Kavanaugh? Maybe, maybe not. But what would somebody gain by lying? Well, you could destroy. If you brought Brett Kavanaugh down by lying, you prevent a justice of the Supreme Court from coming on for the next 30 years who can change the policies that affect your lives in an incredibly personal way. If you wanted to bring Joe Biden down, you would gain the ability, if you could destroy his candidacy, to stop the frontrunner of the Democratic Party from receiving the nomination and possibly becoming the most powerful elected official in the world. That's what you can gain. You could destroy a person you don't like's reputation. You could literally protect yourself. I know a woman a couple years ago just graduated from an Ivy League college in the East Coast, and she said that she saw people, and she was a young athlete, and she wasn't a conservative per se, liberal per se. She was probably more liberal than conservative. She said she found all the time that girls lied about harassment and assault claims on campus. And I was like, how do you know that? She's like, well, for one, I know of an actual case where it happened in my sorority where a girl hooked up with a guy, and the next day they'd been drunk, and she told her sorority friends, including this girl, that she was horrified that she'd done it, couldn't believe how drunk she was, wished she'd thought better, and went out and said he assaulted her. He got kicked out of school. Her friends and she said, he didn't assault you. She's like, I know, but I didn't want everyone thinking I was a slut. So sometimes it's that simple why you would do it to someone. And obviously, if you want to get political, let's face it, this happened with Clinton. And I said at the time, it wasn't about Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. It was about the Republicans having a way to bring Bill Clinton down. And I worked in the White House around that time. And I'll tell you, people inside the White House even said, Clinton's press secretary at the time said to me, we're pissed at the president because he handed the Republicans a loaded gun and pointed it at our administration, at himself. So I get why politicians do it. I get why Nancy Pelosi is going out there and saying, I believe Joe Biden. It's so hypocritical, but politicians are hypocritical. Politicians do what politicians need to do to get reelected and to destroy their opponents. Republicans did whatever it took to destroy Bill Clinton. It wasn't about Monica, and it wasn't about a perjury under oath saying, did you have sex with her? It was about destroying the president. So I get why Democrats wanted to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. It's disgusting, but both sides do it. What I don't understand is why advocates of the cause, feminist advocates, Me Too movement advocates would do that. Because you're about a principle bigger than whoever gets elected. And the media is supposed to have, it's not objective, but it's supposed to try to be slightly objective and present us all sides. So I understand the politicians. They're going to do it. I'm just like, oh, roll my eyes. Like, seriously, Nancy Pelosi, you really believe Joe Biden? Like, she's like, I don't want to take any more questions on this. He said he didn't do it. I believe him. Okay, new standard. Let me get another question in here. I see I got a guy named Jim. Yes, Bruce. Bruce is in. Our producer.
I'm going to say something real quick. When you asked what kind of gain, there could always be the most simplest one is sometimes also the most logical, just financial gain. Someone could be just paying them under the table. So, and maybe get a book deal out of it. Yeah.
Fair point. But I'm going to say, honestly, I don't think most people are you could blackmail somebody, but I think literally the motives we're seeing now tend to be self-preservation or destroying someone you don't like. And it could be personal or it could be political. And on the political stage, destroying someone you don't like, it's a powerful tool. The caveat to this is Tara Reid isn't a Republican. Tara Reid worked for Senator Biden. And if her mother's to be believed, actually called in and said, my daughter doesn't want to go to the press because she respects this man and doesn't want to destroy him. How good of her, right? And now she's a Bernie supporter. So that's where the Bernie supporters and people say, oh, she's doing it because she's a Bernie supporter and wants to hurt Biden. Okay, but she's not a Republican. She's not a Trumper. She's left. Okay, I see I got Jim. Hi, Jim. Is Jim there? Jim's not there. All right, how about Rick? Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
What do you think?
Well,
you sound exasperated there.
I am, because I think everybody has a double standard. And I think that if you believe one side, you got to believe the other side. And if you don't believe the other side, then you want your own excuses. And I think that if you look at the two examples of the Republican, Kavanaugh is on the bench.
Yep.
So he's there, and the
Yep.
president is the president.
Yep.
And he's there. So why punish your side when the other side doesn't get punished? And I think that it's almost like a double-edged sword, and everybody wants, well, if you're going to keep my guy to a standard, then you need your guy to stay to a standard as well. And it doesn't seem to be fair.
Interesting.
And so that's why it's like, well, don't punish my guy because your guy's not punished.
Okay. So let me ask you something, Rick. So I'm going to guess from what you're saying, you're on the liberal side. Fair enough?
I'm center left a little bit.
Center left.
I'm not all the way to the left.
You're certainly not on the Trump camp.
No, I'm not a Trumper.
Okay. No
but
Trump.
I'm a fiscal responsibility.
Okay.
kind of guy.
Okay. But okay. So I'm just saying your bias is, and you make an interesting point. So I want to push back on that and ask you this. Well, two things. One, isn't it fair to say though that the media and the Democrats did try to bring Brett Kavanaugh down and Donald Trump? They just failed. It's not like they didn't try. They, especially with Kavanaugh, they tried literally over a course of a month to destroy his nomination with hundreds of articles, hundreds of people coming out, new allegations emerging, right? Didn't they try? So is the standard because we failed, we should now, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm asking?
No, I just think that there's, when you see that there's no justice in the world and you tend to get a little cynical about it and go, well, don't hold me to the same standard if you're not going to hold yourself to that standard. So if we're going to believe people.
But so do you not think it is a double standard? Do you not think the way the media and the Democrats are handling this, and let's focus even to the extent on the media, because I get Democrats, they're going to, because it's political. I mean, the media had there were like 700 articles and stories on CNN in the first 3 weeks of the Kavanaugh allegation. There was 0 in the first 3 weeks of Tara Reade. And there've only been like 3 in the subsequent.
Well, but the difference is one is it's, that's on television for 8 hours a day, every day, during the hearings. And right now, there's nothing going on television.
But
really.
Honestly, so you would suggest that's an interesting point, but you would suggest that in fact you don't think there's a double standard. The large silence on the part of the media, even leaving it out of stories, the New York Times slow to get it. The initial story saying Tara Reade was questionable. I mean, you don't think it's at least a double standard, even if you think it's one that's okay. You don't see a double standard in the coverage.
No, well, as far as coverage is concerned,
and in the media and in the politics,
I don't know if I would call it a double standard. I think that there are it's just like a marriage. Your marriage isn't perfect, and there's certain things that you sort of accept to be okay, and other things you don't. And so, it's not always cut and dry. It's not always like this is the way it's always got to be, and if anybody crosses this line, you're out. It's a whole,
Okay.
So I got to ask.
Thanks. So Rick, Bruce, let me have my screen back for a second. So I want to say something about that, Rick, and to all you listening. And this is something that I have felt and believed for a long time, which is, I think we are at a point where we have a very hard time seeing the balance in things that don't fit our narrative. And I could be as guilty of it as anyone. I'm just saying, when I hear what Rick said, I don't think there's a double standard. I believe Rick means that. I think he's an honest, thoughtful person. But I don't know how you could not see a double standard. Yet, I think we all see what we want to see at this point. So I think to a large extent, there are a lot of people who are looking, going, it's not a double standard. To me, objectively, I don't know how you could think it's not a double standard. I mean, given the sheer volume of coverage, I've looked at it, given that people, CNN's media sources, Brian Seltzer, didn't even mention it. He mentions everything. Major newspapers glossed over it until they were pushed and pushed. Again, Alyssa Milano saying what she said, and Rose McGowan, who's another huge Me Too activist, coming out and saying, you are a complete hypocrite. Like, how, to me, the double standard is so visible, but I think we maybe are so to the point where we see what we want to see to some extent. And our frameworks are no longer driven purely by facts. They're more driven by narratives. I used to wonder in my head, how could people in the old days, like with slavery, how did they not be offended by it? I mean, some people were, but how were people like okay with it? I'm like, well, the way they looked at the world, I guess, like it's shocking to me that people weren't like, this is the most inhumane thing ever. So I don't know, to some extent, do we see what we want to see? And if that's the case, we're in big trouble, because that means we're going to keep seeing what we want to see. And we are such a divided country right now. We're going to just keep dividing and dividing and dividing. I don't know that we will come to a middle, to a whole, to a coming together. I want us to. So here's my last thought on this. And it shifts a little off. It shifts a little to the politics in a different way. I think Joe Biden is a flawed candidate. I think he's been a flawed candidate from the start. He's a prop-up establishment candidate. The media gives him, before the virus, limited coverage, because mostly when they put him on screen, he said stupid things and stumbled, and he sounds like an ancient. He sounds like he's out of 6 generations ago. I'm going to take you out behind the woodshed. If you said that to one more person, literally, it's like this old dude who looks like he's frail and forgets everything. He was a flawed candidate, but the establishment thought he could actually beat Trump, and Bernie couldn't. And I've said for a long time, I think the establishment wanted Bernie gone. But right now, my question is, where is Bernie? Bernie didn't quit the race. He suspended his campaign. If you're Bernie Sanders, why aren't you back in the race? Why aren't you literally saying, now it's time for me? Bernie plays it safe. He didn't want to step on Hillary's toes. It's like, are you afraid you can't beat Trump? Because if you think you can beat Trump, now more than ever, if you're Bernie Sanders, you should be saying, hey, Joe Biden was already flawed. He was already weak. Now he's got a shadow over his head that, if it's true, is disqualifying. And if it's not, we'll never know, but could hurt him. And by the way, everything Bernie Sanders, have said about the way the world should work. Well, right now we need what I'm about more than ever. You all want federal help. You all want the government to help you. The coronavirus has shut us all down. Now more than ever, Bernie's idea, if I'm Bernie, I'm like, it's time. You need me. Yet he's more crickets than everybody else. So my odd thing on this all is, why is Bernie Sanders not, do you not believe in what you say? Like, why are you not literally going, I don't care if you think I can't win. I'm the guy that should be there right now in the world we're in. And Joe Biden is flawed. And if Bernie can't do that, it's like you're the guy who doesn't want to take the shot at the end of, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Michael Jordan, they think they didn't take the shot. They'll give it to somebody else. No, it's like, give me the ball. We got 2 seconds left. I got to make a 3-pointer. Give me the ball. And the Bernie's not doing that to me is shocking and saddening. Now, I'm not necessarily a Bernie supporter, but I like Bernie's passion, and I certainly like him better than Joe Biden. It's been a fun conversation. It's the first one. This Friday, like I said, I'm going to have 2 awesome guests. We're going to be talking about cannabis. I really appreciate everybody who called in, all the comments we got in the course of the podcast. You can follow me at Rob Nelson Live. I want to make this something. That is interactive in as many ways as possible. So I want your feedback after the fact, how we can make the show better. Bruce is working hard behind the scenes there, and sometimes on the scenes, you see it pop up there, to kind of create with me something that really can engage you and bring you a different way of looking at things. I'm not saying I'm right about everything, and I have my opinions, but they're my opinions. What I do know is that we all need to be more critically thinking about everything. And if this show can help you think more and open your mind and challenge you, then go for it. Share it with other people. Follow me at Rob Nelson Live on all social accounts, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and share this with other people. Become part of a conversation. My goal, simple, is we need to start having much more honest conversations about what's going on around us, less stuck in our narratives and more open to thinking about things that aren't the way we think they should be or are the way we think they are. Because if we all stay in our little camps, we're just all coming apart. So new era coming out of this disastrous virus. What if we all just said, hey, let's open our minds and give ourselves something new to think about. I'm Rob Nelson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being part of it. See you guys on Friday at 6 o'clock for a really cool second